are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and we're kind of back to normal here a little bit. We'll talk more about not being back to normal later. But by that, I mean, joining me, as always, it is the one and only Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'd be doing a whole lot better if we had games to talk about today. We're just going to rip the Band-Aid here off the top. If by some miracle you have not heard, all of the Philadelphia Flyers games have been postponed for this past week, and also everything else is kind of up in the air at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, it's been a rough week for Flyers content, huh?
Yeah, you could say that again. It's not, it's been slow.
Yeah, we talked last week about a whole bunch of pre and post game videos and all sorts of content. We're getting fired up leading into the Lake Tahoe game next week, and that's all of a sudden up for debate.
Well, so here's the funny part for me. We came when we did the show last week, and we did the show after the Washington game, thinking, okay, here's a chance, here's a shot we have to do a game after it's 12 o'clock start, technically 12:30 because NBC, but whatever. It's over by 3 o'clock. Let's get on. We'll record the show then. So we're going live, kind of fresh. Like it's right off the bat. You're going to tune in on your Monday morning. You're going to see this thing either late Sunday night, Monday morning, whatever it is. And you're going to get to hear about the most recent game. Not, hey, we glossed over Sunday and said, hey, what about the rest of the week? Right. Here's Sunday. And we were talking about, we literally mentioned, hey, you know what the week ahead is? You got two with the Devils still. You got one more with Washington. Sunday, they moved up a Sunday game, so the Rangers are on the schedule. And maybe not the most surprising thing in the world happened on, I think it was Monday it happened. We got the news on right after we finished recording on Sunday that Travis Sanheim was on the COVID list. And one person being on the COVID list is not the greatest concern in the world because it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean he's positive. It doesn't mean anything, but that's why he missed the game on Sunday. And we said it was strange that he wasn't able to play without that kind of notice, but okay. So maybe the least surprising thing that happened this week was that the Devils were still having problems. So those two games were off Monday. The Thursday, Saturday was already off. And I kind of shrugged that off because I go, well, that's more of a problem for them than it is for the Flyers. You have 18 guys on this list or whatever it is. Your list isn't shrinking. You can't play that soon.
You're in trouble. Right.
All right. I'm not going to worry about that. Forget it. It's no big deal to me. And, it's 2 games off. They'll find a way to reschedule 2 games, perhaps. Let's just move on with it. And then Tuesday morning, I woke up and there was the news about the Flyers were having ongoing COVID issues too. And you go, oh no, when we thought last week, we literally said it last week on the show. It looks like they might have just made it through and avoided a big problem. And now there's problems.
Yep. And those problems ended up manifesting themselves in the form of currently 7 players on the COVID list. It's some big names. Claude Giroux's there, Jake Voracek's there, Travis Sanheim is there. We knew it was likely to happen eventually. We knew every team was going to miss some games. It's just going to happen. And like you said, we already had kind of Thursday, Saturday queued up as we were missing them, but we didn't think it was because of us.
Yeah.
And now it's in the Flyers locker room, and we think, right, as of this recording, 10:39 a.m. on Sunday, nobody knew was added to the COVID list yesterday on Saturday.
Right.
We haven't heard today. Obviously, we won't hear probably for a couple hours.
Yeah, every day it's about 5 o'clock or somewhere in between 5 and 6. They normally update the list. And if you would have told me, and I'm not saying you're not wrong, it was going to affect every team in some way. I think that the difference between affecting a team one way or another is that you hope it would have affected them the way it affected them for the Devils games. It's another team's problem. You just can't play the game because it's another team's problem. The last thing you wanted was for it to be your problem.
Yep.
And now it is their problem. The thing that I've seen, and I've seen other people tweet this as well. I didn't tweet this, but it was a thought that I had in my head. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year that I'd be sitting there refreshing the COVID list at 5 o'clock until it was updated to just see if,
and it would matter
just to see who made it, who didn't, what's the situation, because you're getting into a spot. And obviously, okay, we knew when Sanheim went on the list on Sunday, that was announced, and then there was a statement made by the league about why the game was still played. And truth be told, knock on wood so far, nothing has happened on Washington's side yet, which is good news. They've
but as we learned from this outbreak, it doesn't necessarily show up in a week, right?
Nothing has happened with Washington yet, and nothing has happened with Boston, who played them last Wednesday and Friday. Right. So over a week has gone by from the Boston games.
More encouraging.
And they have nothing, no problems, no nothing. So because literally I sat here last night with a buddy of mine watching the Bruins Islanders game, and everybody's playing, everything looks fine, it's great, So that's
side note: Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, and David Pastrnak are very good when they play together.
They are, but last night they actually had last night they actually had some moments. That was a game that didn't really go their way for the first time in a while. I believe it was their second regulation loss all season.
Full disclosure, I didn't actually watch it, but I looked on the NHL app, and the first goal was, I think, Bergeron from Pastrnak and Marchand. And
the first one was Marchand, because it was a dominant shift, and Marchand, I think, even came off the bench.
Both goals were one of them assisted by the other two, and I just got a kick out of it.
Yes, because Bergeron had the second one, which ironically enough, I missed by like 3 seconds.
Perfect.
So I don't even remember that part happening. I came in, I just saw, because they had just hit the post, I think, to tie the game. And I came back in, I went, wait a minute, why is it 2-2? Did they review and say it was in? And he goes, you just missed it. And I'm like, oh, well, perfect. Okay, of course. And then I got to sit there and watch Matthew Barzal kill my fantasy team this week with a power play game winner.
My fantasy matchup with friend of the show, Dom, is coming down to the wire today. So we'll see how
mine was set up to, because I will not lie. Between the Flyers being off all week, the Capitals now being off all week until
Flyers
today,
being off this week,
the Avalanche having no games for the longest time. Yep. Those three teams not playing absolutely killed me when it came to fantasy this week.
Turns out when you draft players on good teams, and then those teams go a week without playing any games, it hurts your score.
Isn't it a scary thought to think that these Lake Tahoe games are supposed to happen in a week, and the outlier of the teams going that didn't have a problem yet this year is Boston? That's it. Yeah. Every other team has had a postponement or a delay or a long break of some kind. Colorado did. Vegas did. Vegas had an even worse situation than the Flyers did, because at least the Flyers woke up on Sunday and found out about Sanheim, and it's like, well, now you're all getting tested quickly today to find out if you can even play this game.
Right.
But we know the guy who can't play, Right. And they literally in Vegas sent a guy on the bench, let him play in a game for a period and a half to 2 periods, and then we're like, oh yeah, a positive test came back, you got to go.
That's tough.
And it's like, are you kidding me with the way that you manage that?
That's not a good look. And but that's kind of where we're at with the COVID list now. It's kind of at that tipping point.
So
we didn't have any positive tests yesterday. And nobody added to the list yesterday. And if nobody was added to the list today, we can start to maybe see some light at the end of the tunnel and start thinking about that Thursday game.
Yeah.
And start thinking about Lake Tahoe next Sunday.
I thought the big encouraging thing, and I'll say again, because last Sunday it was Sanheim goes on the list, and we all knew it was coming. Right. And even on Tuesday, there was a report that came out that said ongoing issues, and somebody said there was an additional positive test found. Now, let's just make assumptions here. I assume Travis Sanheim tested positive. I'm not trying to confirm or deny anything. I don't know what the story is, but the way they made it sound was an additional positive test. So it sounds like Sanheim was
positive test one.
And one of Claude Giroux and Justin Braun, who went on the list on Tuesday and are the reason that the game on Tuesday got postponed. One of them is positive as well, we assume. We don't know which. We don't know who it is. We don't have any information, and you're not going to get any information because the league is not doing anything to tell you who it is specifically. If you're on that list, it does not mean you even have it. It means it could be a false positive. That happened with oh my goodness, who did that happen with earlier? There was a guy who that happened to.
I remember hearing about that, but I don't remember the actual name.
Steven Stamkos is on the list for Tampa, and tweeted that he believes it's a false positive. Oh, I know who. Jesse Puljujarvi for Edmonton.
Okay.
He was on the list for like a day or two, and there was a whole big thing about, oh my goodness. First of all, oh my goodness, it's the first one in the North Division.
In Canada.
Right. Now it's in Canada. And then it was, how long is this going to last or whatever could it be? And he was off the list in a day or two. So clearly they don't have any issues still. It happened. You have to take the precaution, but he got cleared that quickly. And that's the hope for anybody on this list, is that if you ended up there, that maybe it's just a false positive in some way, that you didn't really get it, but there's no way to determine that. And they're not going to tell you. So you're on the list. whether you are a positive test, whether you are a false positive waiting to get conclusive evidence that you're not, whether you were in contact with a person who is a positive test. So the list continued to grow is the point. So it went, so Giroux and Braun were at it on Tuesday. Then Wednesday, there was nobody again. Another day went by and it was clear, and you're still sitting at 3 and you're going, well, that's not bad. That's some good news. Maybe it'll stop at 3. And then the next day, Jake Voracek and Morgan Frost were on the list. And you go,
they're getting added in pairs.
Now, granted, on Thursday, you go perspective. Jake Voracek's a concern, but Morgan Frost, the story came out that he had surgery done in Colorado a week ago. They are putting anybody on the list for extensive travel.
And he's been nowhere near the team.
Well, that's the assumption. The only other thing that people can think of is that did he go to the facility for rehab purposes?
Did it go through a staff member?
And did it go through a staff member or something? Right. Correct. So it could be. It doesn't mean it is. And see, here's the other part of it. If he visited the facility because he was never on the COVID list to begin with after that surgery, could he even be the source? There's a possibility that it's not the New Jersey Devils who added players right after the Flyers played there a couple weeks ago. It could be Morgan Frost got a surgery done, went to another state to do it, and then came back, visited the team doctor.
It's easier to blame the Devils, isn't it?
Oh, you're never gonna know. That's the thing. Like,
I know, I'm joking.
Even in personal experiences, you're gonna sit there and you go, could it be work? Could it be the grocery store? Could it be? You're never gonna know. You just have to take it for what it is. So,
either way, as it is, we sit here on Sunday morning. We have 7 people on the list. It kind of feels like they're at a tipping point, right? If we go another day or 2 with nobody added to the list, you can start to breathe a little easy. You can start to think about that Thursday game, that Lake Tahoe game next Sunday. If a name or 2 pops up today, I'm worried that we're going to end up like Minnesota or the Devils with 16, 17, 18 guys having it, because at that point it's in the locker room, and at that point the NHL has another team where the whole team got it. And when do they address if that does indeed happen to the Flyers and the Flyers blow into a full-blown, most of the roster gets it, at what point does the NHL acknowledge that their protocols are not working?
I think they already have a little bit, but let's
at a certain point, we're looking at 3 or 4 teams where just the whole team has it.
Right. Well, I won't go so far to say the whole team, because the Devils, the whole team had it. Buffalo topped out at like 9 or 10 at most. The head coach also had it.
Didn't Minnesota have 17 or 18?
Minnesota
Dallas had 17 at the start of the season.
See, okay. I don't blame the Dallas one on the league, though, because the Dallas one happened before they came in. So that to me is too many people from too many locations.
For sure.
All maybe not making the smartest decisions or something like that. So that's not a blame game to me. Sure. Minnesota got up to like either 12 maybe, but they also significantly dropped a number. Like, it's one thing for me to look at the numbers from Friday from Friday to Saturday, which is the most recent update we have, and say the Devils are still in the teens. Okay, that's still a problem area. Buffalo only dropped 1 player, so 9 to 8 is the right direction, but it's not significant. Minnesota went from 12 to 8, and you're going, well, wow, 4 players off the list, and maybe all that means is that for 5 days they just tested negative.
Yeah,
got the clearance, like they were never like from contact, so they're back. They're off the list. They're good.
Hopefully,
those 4, and Minnesota is preparing to come back now because of that. Right. They have a situation where they're able to come back. Buffalo is still, Buffalo's got to be getting closer, because I know it's still at 8, but they've got to be getting closer, because if you're going to make Minnesota play with 8 or 7 on the list, then you're going to make Buffalo play, because you can't waste time with this. The Devils are not there yet, but I'd like to see if the Devils drop more now, because they've been off for so long and everything's been closed for them for so long. Like, if you've gone from 17, or I think they were actually at 19 and dropped to 13. So if 6 guys came off in one day, can you drop another 4 and get to 9 now? Hopefully. And be like, okay, even though it's 9 and that's not a good number, 2 days ago you were at 19. So 10 guys came off. Now you have more of a fully functioning team than you did 2 days ago. If the Flyers can stick to 7, that's why I think if the Flyers can stick to 7, I think they're open on Monday.
I agree. And I hope that's the case, obviously. If you can remove, those 7 people from the facility, obviously, and they've done their cleaning, and they've et cetera, et cetera.
There's almost a good thing that this happened on the road, Yeah. Because if it happens when you're home, then you really are tracing everything, because you're going, well, now you practice in the same building, and now you got to go contact tracing is a crazy thing at that point. It's not just
it's where
sharing the
everyone
locker
went
room
on their free time.
It's weight rooms, it's eating, it's anything like that. This is when you found out about it, you were all in hotels anyway. So the easiest thing to do was say you're stuck in your hotel room or until you go home, and they can isolate them that way. Like there's a lot more flexibility in that regard.
Yeah. And as we move forward, we're kind of looking to that Thursday game, but in the grander scheme of things, do you think I heard something floated, and I'm kind of curious your thoughts on it.
Okay.
Games between teams that don't matter. In baseball, those games don't get made up a lot of times. At the end of the season, if a game gets rained out late and it doesn't matter for playoff implications, baseball doesn't always necessarily worry about completing it if they don't have to. Do you think there could be a situation where that's the case in the NHL? Do you think if Buffalo, New Jersey games get canceled, how worried is the NHL about making them up?
Well, have you seen the standings lately?
I know we're running out of time. We're going to run out of time.
Well, no, that's not. I'm not talking about this. I'm not talking about running out of time with it. But I'm looking at the standings. I'm going. Well, I know they've been off for a while, and they're not. They have points to make up by playing those games.
Possibly expect them to end up there.
Well, no, but like what I'm trying to get is that the Flyers played the Islanders a couple weeks back, like the weekend, 2 weekends ago, right, or something like that, and they won both games in overtime. And now the Islanders, since getting 2 points out of possible 4 from those 2 games, which could have easily been wins for them, they've won 3 of 4, and the one loss was in a shootout. So they've gotten 7 out of 8 points in the next 4 games, and now they're magically back in 4th place in the division.
Sure.
And I get that some of that has to do with, well, the Flyers didn't play all week, and Washington didn't play all week, and Buffalo and New Jersey haven't played in a while, but you're still maintaining a pace. Like the Rangers haven't gained on the Flyers or the Capitals or the Bruins in any way, and they've had time to be the only ones playing somewhat.
No, right. I'm talking about if a game between Buffalo and New Jersey gets canceled because of COVID protocols, are they worried about making that up at the end of the season?
Right now, yes. The later it gets, no.
That's what I'm saying. When did it get
that? But and then the point I was trying to make by pointing out the division is that, well, if they slipped to the bottom and they still are at the bottom toward the end of it, and one game points percentage wise doesn't make a difference, because that's where I think it's going to come down to. Like, I think you're going to have too much it would going
to play 56 games
because it would be easy to say that's the only 2 teams that had a really long off period, and by the way, their games were against each other in some capacity, so that's not as hard to make up. Like, I look at the Flyers right now and I go, I'm not terribly worried about the idea that if you're able to return to your facility on Monday, and Thursday is still on the table, and Sunday's still on the table, but it's not Lake Tahoe, but you're going to play the game that's scheduled for Sunday at some point.
Because that has been floated, right?
Right. Then
Flyers could be moved out of Lake.
But then I'm going, you're talking about 4 games to be made up, and I understand scheduling is tight, and maybe the league has to think about opening up an extra week of the regular season to do it, but you go, is it impossible? I don't think it's impossible to make up 4 games. But it's starting to become impossible with 6, 7, 8, and God forbid that you have another situation where, we have to stop again because it hit us again.
I believe the NHL has said that they have 10 days at the end of the regular season in terms of flexibility.
I believe that might be the case. I don't know if it is for sure. And the only reason I say I don't know if it is for sure is because of the fact that they are, look, it's not smart, in my opinion, to have to try to base your schedule around something television related. We've got to have an out by this date because the Olympics are coming. I understand the Olympics are important to the network. I'm not trying to deny that, but one league should not have to bend at the knee to say, because you host the Olympics and have that and you want the television coverage, you have to get your games off of the network as quickly as possible. When in a situation when safety needs to be the most important thing, you could not have the Olympics this year because something happens right before. What happens if you host the Olympics and somebody gets it in the middle of the Olympic bubble you have?
Well, sure.
What happens? Now you just pushed the whole league off and said, don't play all the games you had on your schedule because you got to get this season done when the Olympics start, and the Olympics could be postponed to an extent.
Well, first of all, the Olympics will always, always, always have precedence over the NHL and the networks.
Agreed. Well,
the amount of money and viewers involved.
Right. But to me, it's an indictment on the network that it's on to say, you want hockey? Good luck.
Sure. The network would come back with, well, don't be greedy and try to jam 56 games into this time frame.
I suppose.
Right. The NHL would have come back and said, well, why couldn't you do a 48 game schedule like you did in 2013? That would have given you 8 games more flexibility. It's a very similar time window. It would have worked out way better. And they probably should have done something like that when they made this schedule, because they should have foreseen some amount of issues.
Right.
But the NHL is never going to be able to push around the Olympics in any way, shape, or form. And they're never going to be able to push around the NBC when it comes to the Olympics. Well, because the entire world watches the Olympics.
Yeah. Well, you said something there that's really interesting that makes a valid point, or that makes a valid point for another sport, because you know what? Baseball had this problem at the start of last season too, and it happened to the Phillies like right away. You know, they played 3 games. The team they were playing, they found out had a COVID issue. We watched that go from, well, they might have 3 guys who can't play to, oh no, like the whole clubhouse has it now.
Right.
Like the whole team has it. They can't play.
The season started and boom, the Phillies were
They can't play. And the Phillies did not play a game due to contact tracing and whatnot for a week. I think they went 8 days without a game, which in baseball is an eternity. Like we're talking about 4 games being postponed for the Flyers. We're going, that's with days off in between though. That's Tuesday, then Thursday, then Saturday, Sunday, not daily series where you're going, hey, 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, off day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
And baseball gave their people more lead time, didn't they? Like more time to come in and get tested and go through, like they had
a little bit, but
the NHL was only in town for like 8 days before the season started.
So the reason I do bring it up though, or the reason I say something about it is this. Baseball at the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken, never scheduled the playoffs. Like we knew what the playoff series were going to be. Obviously, the structure is what it is, but they never said, "Oh, it's going to start on this date and end by this date." Well, you didn't get that. You didn't get that until September.
Well, right. To your point, they didn't have a hard date that they were jutting up against. Like
right. Like, see, I look at the NHL and I go, at the end of the day, the end of the regular season is May 8th, and your intention is to start the playoffs on May 11th. Well, if you intended to do that, then you banked on nothing happening. Not like baseball that said, you know what, we're going to have to leave a gap and just in case and figure it out. And look, baseball has one very unique difference from all of these other sports, because the NBA is not doing this and the NFL is certainly not doing it. And neither is the NHL, because it's similar to the NFL in a sense. You're not playing 2 in one day.
No.
You know, and baseball could sit there and say, you know what, we cut the games down to 7 innings and you can play 2 and we'll make it up. That's how we can do this.
Do you think you could see back-to-backs in the playoffs for the NHL this year? Like if those 10 days end up being 12 or 13 days, right? Those 10 days of flexibility end up getting pushed back a little bit. Do you think in the first round between, say, games 2 and 3, you just play them back to back?
I think something that the league needs to do, and they're tracking it, don't get me wrong, but I think something they need to add to what they're tracking with this is the number. Like they have a list of all the games that have been postponed so far, and I believe it's up to something like 35, 36 overall, something like that. And now granted, out of the 36, I believe half of them have been rescheduled. Like the ones from the early part of the year, like
a lot of them are like in the
some of these New Jersey games have been rescheduled. I think like Dallas is counted, and all of Dallas's have been rescheduled. That as a result of the Dallas ones, I think Florida rescheduled some and things like that. Like
that was that whole shuffle we were talking about last week, where the Flyers team ended up getting moved up an hour.
Right. So they're all rescheduled. Like they were postponed and then rescheduled. So they're good to an extent. Like it's not like there's 36 games that are out there floating going, we have to fit 36 games in. But
and whoever makes the NHL schedule better get a raise this year.
Right. But the question I have, or the way they should track it is that you should be keeping track of right now the number of postponed games for each team that have been unresolved in a rescheduling phase. Okay. Like how many games are currently missing from a team's schedule, not rescheduled, so that you know later on, do you need to add a week in May to sit there and say we can make up? Because what happens if, like, at the end of the day, the Flyers, let's just say, for all intents and purposes, hopefully this is not the case, but let's say that Thursday against the Rangers gets postponed as well, and Lake Tahoe's off, and they don't play the Bruins on Sunday. And now your target is Wednesday, February 24th against the Rangers, which, assuming that the number maintains or doesn't go higher than 10,
You have to be back
you're
by
covered.
that point.
You have to hope so. And I told you guys in the group chat, I'm bracing myself for the February 27th, 28th weekend in Buffalo, but we'll see. But let's say you add 2 more games and now it's up to 6. You might be able to reschedule 2 of those because you have a common date with the other team that you have an off day on, and you go, we can fit that game in there. So we'll play on, we can play the Rangers on March 21st, which is a Sunday, because they're playing the Islanders on March 20th.
Right. There are even situations like we were actually briefly talking about this week when the Saturday games were still postponed, but the other games were still on, where Washington had a couple of games postponed too, and we talked about sliding a later Washington series up into the Philly series. It would have worked out really well for everybody. So even situations like that will be available, and I'm sure they will be creatively explored.
Right. So what I'm saying is that, and that's what I'm saying. So if you can keep a running count of the number of games that teams have had postponed that have not been rescheduled yet, where you can find a common date, then you start to know how many games you need to fit in for other teams down the road, and hopefully find a common denominator here. Here's an entire blank week. Okay, the Flyers lost 2 games against the Devils. No common dates left in the rest of the season. May 10th and 11th, you're playing back-to-back. They're both Flyer home games, so the Devils have to go there.
Meet me on the playground, 3:00.
Kind of almost. Well, I think they would do it in the more traditional sense still, with like the 7:00 starts. But still, like, you're right. Like, that's when it works.
Yeah,
that's the best we can do, and you push it. Like because I believe that I believe that the Flyers have common dates left with Washington and with the Rangers right now that they could reschedule. It's the Devils that are the problem again. Like the Devils, I think they have no common dates left that don't create a 3-3 or something ridiculous like that. And you're going, well, what do you do? Either you're going to lose the 2 games, which is a possibility. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think that if the Flyers have to play the Devils, and the problem with that is, if the Flyers are a playoff team and the Devils are not, then that game still matters to one team. You have no choice. You got to play it. So I don't know.
Unless things get bad enough, kind of like we talked about earlier, that the NHL ends up going with points percentage, and they acknowledge at some point that teams aren't going to finish a full 56, and you're going to do it the best you can.
Well, one of the thoughts that I had, and this is very legitimate now, is you could have tried to run the schedule in the same time frame. So starting on January 13th, which was the very first game of the season, and run it to May 8th. And you could have, imagine if you would have done the 48 game schedule instead, though, do it the same time frame. Now you can open up these longer gaps, and now you have more leeway within the season to say, well, did we lose one of the 48? No big deal. We've got 3 weeks built in at the end of the season that have bigger gaps. We can find a common date.
Oh,
you're really struggling.
You have a 3-day break in March. We're good. We got this game nice and easy. Boom.
And to an extent, like, I look at it and I go, this worked out. Like, this was kind of good timing for the Flyers on one hand, because you go, realistically, they had 2 games postponed. The 2 against the Devils were already off the table when we heard the Flyers had ongoing COVID issues. So you're sitting there going, well, gee, no brainer to cancel the Tuesday game, because now it gives you off until Sunday. And as the week went on, I had even said, well, if you get to Wednesday or Thursday and you add any more names, you're probably losing the Sunday, but at least you then set the stage for next Thursday. Look how far down the line we can go with this thing.
A lot of break time.
So I love that they had that kind of gap built in, because it gave you less games to worry about making up. Like, in the long run, you lost 4 games right now. It's not a huge deal when you're talking about a health and safety issue. It's not like it was the week leading up to where you said, well, this happened right after the Islander game. You had 2 against Boston, then these 4 or 5 are gone. Like, it could that would have ballooned. If it would have been February 1st, it would have ballooned into 7 games that quickly. And this is, you lost 2 games that were already on your schedule that you could have played this week, and 2 that you lost because another team couldn't play them either.
The NHL was already thinking about rescheduling anyway.
Right. So you didn't really lose that much. Like, honestly, nobody looked at the Devils games and went, uh-oh, that's a problem. They saw them postponed. They went, well, the Devils don't have a team right now, so that's fair.
Honestly, in real time in the group chat, we were talking about, man, it might be nice to have a couple of days off for these guys. Phil Myers is still coming back from injury. Sean Couturier is still getting healthy. Like, give these guys a couple extra days, and it turns out they're going to get a little more than we thought.
That's going to be one of the huge things when they do come back, is Sean Couturier played a game, looked really good playing a game, and then all of a sudden got a week off. Week and a half off.
I hope he looks good, because he has time to get back. Because I'm sure he came back before he was 100%. Because Sean Couturier,
probably a little bit. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that he got the game back. He played that game. He got a little bit of that. Okay, I can play through this injury out of his system. Has time to get it back to 100% where he feels absolutely confident with it. And kind of similar things for Phil Myers. He came back for the one game too. So the fact that these guys came back, knocked the rust off, then they're going to end up getting a week and a half to go from 90 to 100%, which is not something you have the opportunity to do often in an NHL season.
Right, exactly. And I think that's,
so this could be a blessing in disguise.
Well, it could be. Look, I look at the way Vegas was when they came back from their long break and they weren't exactly sharp from the beginning, so you lose a little momentum. It's why I'd like to play the Ranger game first, though, because the Rangers to me just don't fire on all cylinders yet either.
I don't want to go play a primetime game against the Boston Bruins, who look very, very scary right now.
Right, like and see, part of the problem with the Boston Bruins, like if you play the Bruins first in coming back from this, is that you almost have another built-in excuse. Like everybody, like right now, everybody who's watched the first 4 games between the Flyers and the Bruins wants, like, not even once.
Want more excuses. I want them to beat the freaking Bruins.
Well, right, and that's the point. Like everybody knows, like at this given moment, based on everything that you've watched, and let's put it this way: the Bruins have continued this while the Flyers have been off during this last stretch. They've continued to keep going in that direction. That it's pretty obvious the division runs through this team right now.
Yeah,
it runs through the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I actually saw the Athletic just updated their playoff model, and right now the Boston Bruins in their model are 88% to win the division.
Yeah,
which is
absurd. And I think that has to do with 2 things. It has to do with how good they've been, obviously, but it also has to do with the fact that they're playing more games, which boosts the points percentage. And the points percentage is so good that, like, they could even have a period where they get stopped and their points percentage is going to stay right at the top. So that's why the percentage of them winning the division is so high, because in all scenarios, they're already the better team in terms of consistent results. And then they're building up a foundation of results that you go, if they don't play all their games, it's not going to matter because they're going to have the points percentage going.
The Boston Bruins are up six runs in the 5th inning, and they're hoping for a rain delay.
It's that's not a bad analogy, honestly.
Right. Well, all right. Listen, we have done the COVID thing to death, and we really have talked about it for almost a year, and it has finally touched the Flyers.
Yeah.
Because honestly, even through the bubble and through the shutdown and through, we didn't really hear much about any Flyers testing positive or having problems with it.
The only things that I had leading up to it, maybe this was kind of the writing on the wall to an extent. So the only incident that happened the entire time they went through the return training camp and the playoffs was Jake Voracek missed a practice with an inconclusive test.
That flight from the Czech Republic.
Which, by the way, like it's a shame because, like, I'd love to know. And apparently, of course, I'm not privy to this because, like most people, I'm blocked. But Jake tweeted something the other day that I think had to do with his status in some way because his name showed up on the list, or either that or he went after somebody. Like, again, he did one of his Twitter, like, I'm gonna make a comment at somebody, and a lot of people were just commenting, like, responding to it, feel better, all that type of stuff. Because I could see that.
The podcast is not blocked, which is beautiful. So on February 11th, Sam Carchidi tweeted out that Jake Voracek and Morgan Frost were added to the NHL Flyers COVID-19 protocol list. Jake was not a fan of the picture because Jake tweeted, he quote tweeted Sam's tweet and said, "Sam, when this picture was taken, Frosty was about 12 years old."
Okay, see, I didn't see that at all because I'm not, like I said, I'm blocked.
Just defending a teammate,
Okay, but all these people were just saying feel better and things like that, replying to it, like to what he said. So that is what it is. It's not that big of a deal, but the bottom line being, look, you kind of have to go through this thing and figure out. So Jake was on the not on the list, but like he was inconclusive for a day and missing from practice, and literally said the next day after he returned, "I'll tell you if you want me to tell you." So okay, whatever.
Either way,
right. And then the only other ones I have is Shane Gostisbehere tested positive early in the year, like from training camp, and that was essentially confirmed by the team. And then the other one was Chuck Fletcher said he had it.
Sure.
Or that came out that he had it, but he stayed in a hotel for a week and didn't go near anybody, and that was the end of that. And he's feeling fine now. So
obviously we're hoping that the 7 people are on here just kind of for precautionary reasons. Like we talked about earlier, we suspect at least 1 or 2 positive tests, and obviously we hope those players are feeling okay, and we hope everyone else just here out of cautiousness. Claude Giroux's wife did announce that she is pregnant and
apparently like today.
Him being included on the list is a touch concerning, but
now you're really because now you're really thinking about it, because now you go, Claude Giroux already has a young son at home, and now his wife's pregnant too, and he's isolating at the moment because we don't know the situation. Justin Braun has a 5-year-old daughter. Oscar Lindblom's on the list, and he's coming off of the cancer treatments, so he's technically considered a high risk case.
We're hoping, as far as names on the list, it's not a good set of names.
But no, but we talked about this when the play returned last year, because we said these guys who are opting out are the ones who are going okay, I want to say something right now about a name that comes up an awful lot in conversation around this team right now, because people would like to see him back on the team.
Oh no.
You know who I'm talking about.
What are you about to say?
No, Matt Niskanen. We hear all about, I wish Matt Niskanen would come back. Do you see why Matt Niskanen looked at the landscape of the season and went, yeah, no, I'm out. See ya.
I don't blame any player that has chosen.
Do you really think he'd come back now that the team that he signed to technically, is having this issue, and he's got a family and he's got he's enjoying life retired? He would never come back.
I don't blame a single NHL player who has decided to make any sort of decision this year based on their family over their career. Absolutely not. Family comes first, and we've made that very clear on this show.
And I'm agreeing with you what you're saying. What I'm saying is people did it last summer because it was a quicker stint. This is when it was a whole season, 56 games. There was everybody was kind of going, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
Right.
And now you're seeing a lot of players hit that list.
I respect Matt Niskanen making that choice, certainly.
But I'm that should put that conversation to bed. You wonder why he decided now at 33, 34 years old and still in a good spot in his career with a shot to win with a team that he made better, clearly. Right. You wonder why he just said, I'm hanging him up, I'm done, and felt at peace with that decision, because he's looking at the bubble and going, if that's what it's going to take to complete a season, I don't want to do this. And I definitely don't want to put my own health at risk to get to that point. So forget it. And he was out, and I don't fault him anymore.
No, certainly not. And
I didn't in the beginning, to be fair, but now I look at it and I go, you people can just stop talking about it, because he's not coming back when this situation happened right there.
He already wasn't coming back, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I know, but this just drives the point home.
Right. Matt Niskanen is gone until he decides to take a coaching job somewhere, because he's going to take a coaching job somewhere.
I think he's going to be involved, and I wouldn't be shocked if it's with the Flyers, because the question was floated. The question was floated to Chuck Fletcher, and he said that hasn't come up yet. And I think it's because it's hard to do in this time. I can see him in player development. I
think he will be wherever his family owns a home, and if that's in Pittsburgh, where he was for a while, then I think he'll be.
No, it's I think it's Minnesota.
Well, then I think he's going to call Minnesota and ask for a job.
I don't think that's going to happen, though, because the teams that pick you for that type of stuff are the ones you've played for that go, I like your work ethic. So you're right. Pittsburgh could be on the table, or Washington could be on the table, or, something like that. I believe he played in Dallas for a brief period too, but I don't think he's got that kind of longevity there.
Right. Either way, Matt Niskanen is no longer on the team. He has retired.
Right. I was just making the point that if you wonder why he did it and why he's probably not coming back, there's your answer. Look at the way that,
Speaking of retired Flyers and the Pittsburgh Penguins, you see, this week the news came out that Mr. Ron Hextall, Flyers legend, both as a goalie and a GM, has decided to take a job with the Pittsburgh Penguins as their new general manager. and I'm not going to lie to you, that hurt. That hurt the little kid fan in me who was watching Ron Hextall run around the crease in 1996. It hurt me a little bit. And people who have listened to this show for a long time know that I'm a big fan of what Ron Hextall did with the Philadelphia Flyers. I think he set this franchise up very well. I think he saved this franchise from Paul Holmgren. And I don't say that lightly. I think factually he did that. He set this team up. He drafted all your favorite young players. And I said on this show that if the Flyers win the cup in the next couple of years, Ron Hextall is going to be a big part of that. And it really hurts to know that if the Pittsburgh Penguins win a cup in the next couple of years, he might literally be a part of that. and this is the man. This is the man who gets to decide how to get Sidney Crosby his last cup, because that's his job at this point.
Do you think that he's going to actually be able to do that, though? That's the thing.
Do I think he's going to be able to? I'm not sure. Because
to me this is going to play out one way or another, and it's going to be extreme one way or the other,
Right. I'm not sure if he can. I think that will be his directive, especially given the fact that his direct superior is Brian Burke, who has been hired as the president of hockey.
That was the bigger shocker to me.
Right. So Brian Burke has been hired as the president of hockey ops, and it certainly looks like he's there to keep Ron Hextall under wraps. Or in control,
a little bit. I mean, I'm going back to I'm going back to my Twitter profile for a minute because I was retweeting different things about this as it was kind of happening. So I'm trying to see when I started to see some stuff about it, because that's why I'm saying, because I'm like for Ron Hextall to get that job, the writing was on the wall already. Like the second that he had an interview, I think I retweeted the report that he had an interview, because I'm like, keep an eye on this. This is a where there's smoke situation, like they're going to bring him in, and I wouldn't be shocked if he impresses them enough to where they want it. Like, and you know what? I didn't mention this in like my radio spot this week when I was talking about this, but I just thought of it. I don't know if he was the first choice, because I think that they wanted a guy like Chris Drury, and he was out of the running as quickly as he was in it. There were other guys too. I mean, Scott Mellamy got an interview too, or was supposed to try to get an interview, and he turned it down because he wanted to stay in Montreal. He likes the situation there as an assistant, so he didn't take it. Right. And there were enough guys who said, you know what? Yeah, no thanks. I'm not going to come and do the interview. I'm not going to do this. I don't want the job. Right. So Hextall got the interview, got granted permission to go from LA to take part in this, and ultimately, I think stood out then as the best option because of the fact that his name came up from the beginning. As soon as there was a vacancy, it came up. But I think Pittsburgh went to a bunch of different, like Pittsburgh didn't just say, let's go get Ron Hextall and do this and be done. They went to a lot of options and lost a lot of names throughout the process to say, okay, now we're going there.
I wonder how many people, well, first of all, I wonder how many people went, oh, I'd have to work for Brian Burke. I'm out. But I also wonder how many people looked at the job and said, man, I might have to be the guy who trades Sidney Crosby. I might have to be the guy who trades Evgeny Malkin. I might have to be the guy who trades Chris Letang. And not right now, but in 2 years or whenever it becomes time, do you want to be the person who pulls that trigger in that city?
You say the guy might have to be, but also I think there was a report that Jim Rutherford had a trade on the table involving Letang, and ownership hated that.
Well, right. And that's why I say not necessarily right now, but in 2 years, if the team has fallen apart around them and you're shipping Sid off on the last year of his deal to go win a cup somewhere, do you want to be the one who has to pull that trigger?
See, I think it might be the opposite, because you're saying it's who wants to be the guy who has to say, I pulled the trigger on the trade. Maybe there's guys out there that are going, I have to be the guy who, or like in my mind, as a right, who holds on to them longer than they should, like who has to deal with ownership saying, don't trade these guys because they're part of the core for the long haul. And I think there's guys going sitting there going probably like I'm sorry, if I could get something for Letang right now, if I could get a first-round pick for Letang or a second, I'd do it.
Heard things about Pittsburgh ownership being very involved, shall we say.
Right. So I'm wondering if that's one of the things, but also, all right, so the other thing that I'm mentioning when Hextall, because Hextall's name came up, when Hextall had an interview, I'm like, this is a situation that could play out that way, for one. And then I also thought about, because then later on it was, oh, he's got a second. And as soon as he had a second, I went, uh-oh, he's going to get this job probably, But the Brian Burke thing came from out of nowhere. That was all of a sudden a day of report. Like, hey, by the way, they're fine. Like the report about Hextall was already out. He's done 2 interviews, and now they're finalizing. They're pretty much on a handshake agreement. They're just finalizing stuff.
It might be a handshake by the end of the day.
Right. And I'm like, that's no surprise. But then all of a sudden somebody hits you with, oh, yeah, they're hiring Brian Burke too.
Right. And oh, by the way,
where did that come from?
oh, by the way, he's been a huge part of the hiring process, and he's been the one interviewing all these guys, basically. What? Oh, okay.
But then if like the point is, if Ron Hextall was the worst kept secret that they had because one interview, two interviews finalized, like it was playing out, Brian Burke was their best kept secret because nobody saw that coming and just
I don't know how Brian Burke didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
He's on TV
national
and radio.
television. Yeah.
There's only a finite number of combinations of words in the English language. I figured he would say it eventually. Like, it's got to be out there eventually. I'm the Penguins head of hockey ops. Oh, thanks, Brian.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But either way, Brian Burke is a name. And if any of us don't know who he is, he's that guy on Sportsnet for the last couple of years. But before that, Brian Burke has been around the block. We actually talked about this a little bit before the show. We had to pull it up. Don't look it up. When did Brian Burke get hired as a GM for the first time? It was with the Vancouver Canucks. I'll give you that much, but give me the year.
1995.
1998. Pretty close. Okay.
But it's been a long time. I know that.
Brian Burke was hired in 98 and has just been around, right? He was there until he went to the Anaheim Ducks. Then he ended up with the Toronto Maple Leafs for a couple of years. He went to Calgary for a couple of years. And then his new job is with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
I feel like people didn't pay as close attention to what he was doing. I mean, a little bit because he's made big moves over his career.
Right.
But I feel like when he was in Toronto, now you just went to the hockey capital of the world, it feels like.
Right. You're under the microscope.
Yeah. So everything he did around that team became a very big deal.
And by the way, the interim general manager he replaced in Toronto was Chuck Fletcher.
That's probably because
Cliff Fletcher. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was probably around the time that Cliff Fletcher was doing some stuff with that because he was a senior member of that front office, I believe, right?
Chuck Fletcher's father, correct?
Yes, and Hall of Famer.
So, also, while he was in Vancouver in his first job, he did things such as draft the Sedin twins, draft Ryan Kessler. He kind of put that 2011 Vancouver Canucks team. That was all Brian Burke. He put that team together, and he wasn't there, but he drafted those core pieces. He went to Anaheim. I believe he drafted Bobby Ryan in Anaheim. He's always had a talent. He drafted Morgan Riley in Toronto. He's got a decent little draft record. And
I'm just trying to pull because I just pulled up some of like the trades.
Yeah,
I mean the list is massive, so I'm trying to go back further because he was with Anaheim for a long time apparently.
Here you go. I'm reading directly from the Wikipedia page. During his time in Toronto, Burke was notably criticized for a controversial trade in 2009. This is the Phil Kessel trade when Toronto acquired Phil Kessel. The two picks that were sent to Boston ended up becoming Tyler Seguin and Dougie Hamilton.
Wow. All right, so I got a couple on here that are good. All right, so one of the ones that he made while with Toronto was he fleeced the Philadelphia Flyers by sending Luke Schenn.
Oh, I hate that trade so much.
For James Van Riem's like
I hate that.
I know.
So much.
I'll give you this one. I'll give you this one though, because this one kind of like it didn't work out for a long term, but it was an interesting one. So the Flyers got Chris Versteeg from Toronto during Burke's time there for 2 picks. That was a February deal. I'm trying to see if there's any other good ones that stand out. He made a deal with Boston where Boston got Thomas Caberlet.
Okay,
that's notable.
JVR Schenn deal, the worst Flyers trade of the last
it's right up there. If it's not the worst, then it's right up there.
Luke Schenn was not good.
Yeah,
Luke Schenn was Robert Hagg. Tell me I'm wrong. Would you trade prime JVR for Robert
I think
Hagg?
Robert Hagg is better.
I think okay. I think Robert Hagg is better.
Robert Hagg it's not that Robert Hagg is terrible. Like
he is proportionally better to how much better the game is. Like hockey is just better today than it was in 2010 anyway. You know what I mean? So I think Robert Hagg is a more skilled player than Luke Shen was, but proportionally speaking, I think he's in a pretty similar spot.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, they're not that different, in that sense, because they're like in terms of the role they would play. But I digress. I'm not worried about talking about third pairing defensemen here. I'm going, how do we even get on this subject? Oh yeah, because Brian Burke made a trade that got James Van Riemsdyk in Toronto. God. We had to revisit that one on this show. All right. Well, let's keep going back to Hextall for a minute, because you're right. You're right about the point about Hextall having to basically be the guy now who is responsible for the twilight of Sidney Crosby's career.
Right. That's one way or the other. Whether he stays in, Ron Hextall is the man who gets to decide, roughly speaking, if he stays in Pittsburgh or not.
I don't think that that's really what he's there to decide, though, because and hear me out on this.
I don't think that's what he's there to decide.
Oh, no. But I think it's in his hands whether Evgeny Malkin lasts forever there. I think it's in his hands whether Chris Letang is there. I don't think you trade Sidney Crosby ever.
You don't Ray Bourque trade Sidney Crosby if he asks for it his final season? You don't trade him to a cup team?
No. Well, no. I'll tell you why. Because at the end of the day, it's not like you haven't won. Ray Bourque was with a team that hadn't won a Stanley Cup in ages, and you're going, well, you've been a leader of this team. You have a shot. You know where your career stands. We owe it to you to do this. Ray Bourque is forever a Boston Bruin, but he's won his only Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche. You
don't think Sidney Crosby's earned the right to ask to go win another cup if that's what he wants?
No, if he wants to, then sure. But I'm saying, okay. I think that he's also a type of guy who will read the writing on the wall about not only his career, but the team he plays for, and go. There's some sense of loyalty that, I just don't see Sidney Crosby being a two-team guy. I feel like he's been in this situation. He's gotten everything you could possibly want in your career.
See Joe Montana being a two-team guy?
Well, I guess, yeah, I hear you.
Being a two-team guy?
Yeah, or how about Tom Brady? That's even more relevant. Did you see Tom Brady winning 6 Super Bowls with one team and then saying, I got to go do it again with another?
How bad does Sidney Crosby want to win? And that has never, ever been in question by anyone.
No, that's not been a question. I just wonder if he actually still will believe the longer it goes on. I wonder if he'll actually still believe that Pittsburgh always has a shot. You know what I mean? See, at the end of the day, where could he go? But I'm going are you going to trade him to a hometown team? Well, what are you going to do? Trade him to what? Well, you know what I mean, but what are you going to do? Trade him to Montreal or something like that? Do you think that he puts Montreal over the top to win a cup? By himself. By himself.
How Montreal has looked specifically this year.
I do agree. You know what I mean, though.
Yes, in general, I understand what you're saying.
But it's also not a conversation to have this year or next year. That's a conversation for 5 years down the road.
Probably correct. That being said, Sidney Crosby's 34? It might only be 2 or 3 years down the road. Let's be real.
Well, I wonder if,
right?
No, you're not wrong. It's just
he hasn't exactly had the cleanest injury history, especially with his head. And again, I'm certainly not wishing any sort of ill. I'm wishing he retires, to get him out of my division, but not out of any ill will. He might only have 2 years left.
I wonder if what Ron Hextall is going to have to try to do is not only figure out how to build the team for the future, but figure out the good balance, looking at guys on the team and going, who can we find who's expendable so you free up more money? Because that's the other thing that Ron Hextall did well with the Flyers is here's a bad cap situation. You don't need Vinny Lecavalier in the end of his career. You don't need him anymore, and you don't need that contract. We're getting rid of it. You don't need the Luke Shen contract. You don't need to have money tied up in LTIR with Chris Pronger. We're going to deal those.
They don't need Cody Ceci making.
No, actually, right now they probably do need Cody Ceci because they don't have anybody else.
They don't need Michael Matheson for 6 more years at 4.875. They don't need that. That's a bad contract.
Yeah.
I love it. John Marino just signed a 4-year extension for $4.4 million, and he's very good. But you better hope he stays very good.
I was gonna say Marino's a guy who I can see you linking some of your future to, though. That's different. He's a younger guy with higher potential to an extent. I get it.
Yeah,
I'm talking. The guys I'm talking about are even Letang. Letang's getting to that point where he's past it. You're bringing on these guys like Matheson and Ceci who are low end third pairing guys, but you're signing them to massive contracts to get it done. Like
Jason Zucker making $5.5 million for 2 more seasons after.
Yeah, but that's not their fault. That was a trade.
It doesn't matter if it's their fault. He's on the books.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying they didn't make that contract. They just traded for it.
Nothing right now is Ron Hextall's fault. It's his job to get rid of it.
Potentially. And I just want like, do you almost wonder if I don't say this completely for Pittsburgh, but I'd have to go look at their draft picks lately to wonder if some of those really good drafts have passed them by.
I feel like they've been trading a lot of firsts.
Well, that too, but
when your superstar 1-2 center combo is over 30 years old, you're not really picking in the first round anymore if you're trying to win cups.
Right. Last year they didn't have one. I mean, and didn't they trade?
A couple of years ago, they picked Daniel Sprong in the first round and promptly traded him to Anaheim. They do not necessarily draft all that well, and I think Hextall is going to have to find the balance between not like. I would be surprised if the Pittsburgh Penguins trade their first round pick this year, just because
Ron Hextall. Very surprised. They're gonna go out and try to get more.
Right. But I don't necessarily know if they're going to go out there and get more, because I also think they're going to try to add a piece and win this year. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I cannot see them just voluntarily chalking a year of Sidney Crosby at this point.
Okay, but see, you know what? You're right, because I'm looking back at the draft picks over the years and forget about the year, because I keep forgetting that Malkin went the year before Crosby.
Yeah. Honestly. Yeah, he just didn't come over till afterwards because Russia.
Right. I know. But I'm going through like the list and you're going, okay, the next year they had another second overall pick. They had second, first, and second 3 years running.
That second, that wasn't Marc-Andre Fleury, was it?
Okay, hold on a minute. I'm sorry. Then hold on. They had first, second, 4 years in a row overall. Okay. So they had Marc-Andre Fleury, Malkin, Crosby, and then Jordan Staal was a number 2 pick. Now Jordan Staal is obviously no longer with the team.
No, right? But he did also contribute for a very long time there.
Oh, so sure. No, but I'm looking at the names of guys who are in. I'm looking at names of guys who are in the league who they drafted and going, here's how quickly they've traded against that. Like, believe it or not, Jake Muzzin was a Pittsburgh draft pick.
Okay, first rounder?
No, 5th round.
Oh, okay.
But they traded him later on. I'm looking at I'm thinking of okay, in the first round in 2010, they drafted Bo Bennett. Is he even in the league anymore? I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on a minute. There's another one coming up here. Okay, how about this one? A current Flyer in the system was one of Pittsburgh's first round picks.
One of Pittsburgh's first round picks?
Yes.
Maxim Sushko.
No, Maxim Sushko was a Flyer pick. Derek Pouliot.
Oh, right. Okay.
Was an 8th overall pick in 2012. No longer with the team, obviously. I believe
NHL.
Well, yes, I hear you, but
I'm saying that's poor scouting, that's poor drafting, that's poor. Either Derek Pouliot did not deserve to be picked 8th overall because he was not that good, or they ruined him.
It could be either or. Right? But okay, here you go. Matt Murray. Matt Murray was a 3rd round pick in 2012. Had success. They still shipped him off later. Tristan Jarry was their 2nd rounder the next year. Here's one in 2014. Their 1st round pick was Kasperi Kapanen, who is with the team now, but it's in a roundabout way. He went and played somewhere else first.
And they traded him away cheap. They sold low and bought high on Kasperi Kapanen.
You mentioned in 2015, they had 4 picks in the entire draft. You already mentioned one of them because their 2nd round pick was Daniel Sprong, who is no longer with the team. How about Dominic Simone, who did play for them for a little while, but he's now in Calgary. Yep. He's out too.
They held anybody. Their pipeline is so thin. They had to go get Jack Johnson last year. They had to go get Cody Ceci.
Even down to their first pick in the draft, which ended up being another 2nd rounder. Again, so 2018, another draft year where they had 4 total picks. And yet in the 2nd round, they had 2 picks separated by 5. They had the 53rd and the 58th overall. And it was a deep draft that year. So they draft Kalen Addison at 53. He's no longer with the team because he was in the Jason Zucker trade to Minnesota. Okay. So he's no longer with the team either. And I'm going to check the other one because I'm not sure. I believe he is still. Nope. Philip Hollander, drafted 58th overall, traded to Toronto. Pittsburgh for Evan Rodriguez and
with
Evan Rodriguez. That was to get Kapanen back.
That was to get Kapanen back. So they're just spinning their wheels and trading capital to get their own previous draft.
This is the difference between Chuck Fletcher coming in and saying Ron Hextall did a great job because I've got a full cupboard in that's fully stocked, ready to be used for whatever I need to, whether it's to pull kids up and bring them up to the NHL and build a team around the ones you drafted, or to trade them away or to use them in some way as capital for more acquisitions later. Which like to an extent he did. Like, think about it. If the system isn't so stocked with the players who are already drafted, is he trading picks to get Matt Niskanen? Or trading picks to get Justin Braun?
Absolutely not.
Or what did he? Because what did he trade? He traded a 5th rounder to get the rights to Kevin Hayes.
Right.
Are you making a trade with a 5th rounder if you go, well, I don't like the amount of picks we have anyway, so I need to keep them? No, you're going, we have so many guys already. Let's trade him. Let's trade a pick to get a player who I think is going to help us. So that's when you do step up and take action. They've got nothing. Pittsburgh has nothing in the cupboard, and that's what they've got to do.
They're going to end up having to make a trade like the Flyers ended up making when they traded Braden Chen.
Kind of. And I don't want to see, this is the thing. I know people aren't completely thrilled with what's going on right now with the Flyers because they don't look dominant yet in the game, and they don't look like these kids have developed into a superstar yet. I get it. It's the matter of if you can't see on the surface though, if you didn't look at last year and go, Oscar Lindblom was on his way to being something before something crazy hit his life that puts hockey in the back seat, on the back burner. Don't even worry about it. Go get your health in check first. Fine. You can't take away from what he was leading up to that point. Everybody loved him at that point because they're going, look at how much he's scoring. He's outstanding. Do you not feel the same way about Joel Farabee right now? Because Farabee's having that kind of year. That's a Hextall pick. Nolan Patrick, you've got to give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt to, but I agree he's not playing the best right now.
Joel Farabee, ironically enough, was part of that Braden Chen trade.
Right. And I get it. You're sitting on a guy where you're going, holding out hope for a Morgan Frost to be something, or for Nolan Patrick to bounce back and be something. You know what I mean? I get it. And not all of them hit when they're in the top whatever. Not all of them hit.
To be fair, it does look like Nolan Patrick has bounced back.
But I also don't want to hear about one of the arguments I heard this week was that Ivan Provorov ended up falling into his lap. What, because you weren't good? That's how it's supposed to work. That's not a guy who fell into your lap. That's because the Devils passed on him to draft Pavel Zacha.
Thanks for
That's still not falling into his lap, because you know what? Do you know who was taken a couple picks later that I probably would have said, then that's who you pick instead of Provorov? Mikko Rantanen.
Yep. And Flyers fans wouldn't be complaining about needing a top line scorer. They'd be complaining about needing a top 2 defenseman.
Right. But there's this stigma on a guy like Travis Konechny for having 320, near 25 goal seasons because he's not scoring right now.
Right.
I'm sorry a guy has a slump.
Right. And we've also seen out of him, once he gets it, it comes in bunches. So relax.
The thing that I don't like about those arguments is, if Travis Konechny isn't scoring and the rest of the team isn't scoring, then you have a right to point to that guy and go, you know what? You make a decent amount of money. You make enough money, and you've done it over the years. You got to be better. But when Konechny's not,
I'm sorry, on the Dangle podcast, they refer to a concept of no days off money, where you make enough money that you don't get to have a night off. And Travis Konechny is not quite there.
I understand. That's the Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek's, though, right?
Right. Travis Konechny is making no bad game money.
Right.
He should be solid to good every single night because he's making enough. He should be there. He's making.
But the point I'm making is that if you base everything off of one guy, if Boston sat there and Patrice Bergeron's not the best, one of the better players like that, and Marchand's not, and it's Pasternak, and Pasternak's your goal scorer, could score 50 in a season, but you don't have Marchand scoring 20 and Bergeron scoring 20, right? Let's say that's not the case. Then is Pasternak the no bad days kind of guy at that point where you go, we need him to be successful? And if Travis Konechny isn't successful, but James Van Riemsdyk is scoring 7-8 goals in his first 13 games, are you that worried? Because you're getting that's the point I'm making. No NHL team is winning the Stanley Cup by being a one scorer team, Right. If the Bruins are just David Pastrnak and a bunch of guys who fill a role, They're not leading the division this year. They're leading the division because for years it's been Pasternak's the scorer, Marchand's the chippy, gritty, go into the areas hard kind of guy with scoring ability, and Bergeron's the two-way face-off specialist.
Leads the face-off and shuts
do it
the
all.
other.
Can do it all.
And still they 25 goals a year somehow.
But then you also sit there and you go, in addition to that, and they've got Charlie McAvoy, who's growing into a top defenseman role. And they've got Tuukka Rask and Yaroslav Halak, who give them stable goaltending. Like, the Flyers have the stable goaltending. And thank you, Ron Hextall. That's Carter Hart for you. They've got a top defenseman who's growing into the role. Thank you, Ivan Provorov. They've got guys who could develop, you hope, into it. And no, do they have a guy like Pastrnak? No, they do not. And was Pastrnak there the year of his draft year? Yes, he was. But that's not the point. Because sometimes you don't think that guy's going to be that guy when he gets drafted, and he turns into that guy. Boston develops guys really well. Maybe Boston's development program got him into a spot where look at his skill set, and now we're going to put him alongside. Like, is Pastrnak that guy without Bergeron and Marchand? Maybe not. But that's the benefit of having those guys already in your system. You got them already too.
Yeah, and you see a lot of times that we talked a little earlier, a rising tide lifts all ships. And we see that in locker rooms with guys like Bergeron and Marchand and Pastrnak, and we see it kind of across the league. We hope, as a Flyers podcast, that Ron Hextall will not lift the Pittsburgh Penguins ship too high. But I think that's actually about to do it for us for the week. We didn't really have much to talk about. Again, we kind of expecting to talk about 3 or 4 games and ended up not having any. So that'll do it for today. Social media is at the bottom of the screen at YWT Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. We are also everywhere you can find podcasts: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. Make sure to follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Make sure to follow at Sports Talk PHL. You can also find the show on sportstalkphilly.com. One day I'll figure out how to do these plugs in a more efficient fashion. Before we get out of here, Kevin, anything?
Don't go to Sports Talk Philly to read anything, because there hasn't been anything to read this week. That's about all I got, but otherwise, the only other thing I can think of to sign off on is I hope that the situation, obviously we're recording this on Sunday morning, so we won't know about the Sunday update yet. And obviously we know that's coming out after the fact, and we know that Monday's another day for it too. Hopefully things get back on track, because we had some stuff in the works over the course of the next week, especially with only a handful of games on the docket. And it wasn't, right now we're kind of sitting here just crossing our fingers and hoping that this situation is almost over, because we'd like to see, as much as I think as much as the Flyers were somewhat frustrating us, and believe me, there was a lot of frustrating things in that last game we watched on the previous Sunday. I think we just really we almost can put that aside for a moment and go, you know what? I'd rather be frustrated watching a game than have no game to watch. And I hope that they're back soon. So, because we need games for this show. We've done this already for months and months on end. I certainly hope that while there's other games on, while I'm literally sitting there at 10 o'clock at night watching Calgary, Vancouver to get some of my fix after watching Boston and the Islanders, please give me some Flyers hockey back. Cause I could use the work. I could use the work.
Well, we will see how that goes. If the Flyers play the Boston Bruins next week, we are looking at doing a live show here. Check out the YouTube channel at YWT Podcast. Follow at Kevin_Durso.
I would say keep an eye on the Twitter feed too, just because we'll probably update whether we're going live or not based on what happens.
If the Flyers do not play mid-afternoon, then you can look for this podcast in your normal time slot. Again, follow Kevin_Durso and at YWT Podcast for all the details. Until next week, stay safe.